Hello everybody, this is Tim Durfee from Virtually Trivial, and today we're going to go over setting up your vSphere 6.5 PSCs in what we call a ring topology or a ring replication agreement or a ring agreement. It basically takes your enhanced link mode and just takes it one step further. In our environment, what I'm going to set up is 4 PSCs. We're going to have 2 in one site and then 2 in another site. And then we'll have one single sign-on domain that encompasses all 4. Visually, I have it split up here in my vCenter. You don't have to do this, but visually I was hoping that it'll be a little easier to follow. The first site is going to be in this cluster here, and then the second site will be in this cluster here. I have a VLAN set up for this cluster and a VLAN set up for this cluster. Definitely don't need that. You can set these up in a single VLAN, totally fine. I just did it for instructional purposes. But though a couple things we need to do before we get started, the PSCs need a DNS entry. All of your PSCs need the forward and reverse lookup, or we could run into problems during deployment. And we also need an NTP server. So once those are set, we can get going. So let's look at why a ring replication agreement is so important, especially when you have more than 2 PSCs. So here's our PSCs. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 and 2 are in a site, and 3 and 4 are in a site. By virtue of just installing number 2, we actually have an agreement between 1 and 2 because 2 referenced 1 to get the information for the site and for the SSO domain. Then we also have 3 connecting to 2 just by virtue of installing 3, and same with 3 and 4. Now, what would happen though if number 2 dies? This link and this link no longer are sending replication information. This means that number 1 cannot get any replication over to 3 and 4, and vice versa. 3 and 4 cannot get replication information over to 1. So what we end up needing here is an agreement between 1 and 4, and then we have this full ring. Now if number 2 has died, we can get replication information from 1 to 4, or back the other way from 4 to 1. That's why this is incredibly important when we have more than 2 PSCs. If you go to the VMware website, you're going to download the VCSA. I've downloaded it already. So the nice thing about the newer versions of Windows, I'm just going to right click and say mount. I'll mount it as a CD-ROM. We're going to run through the UI installer. So we want to go here, and then we want to double click on Win32 and double click on this installer.exe. What I'm going to actually do here is install into an already existing vCenter. So this vCenter already exists. I'll be deploying the VMs in each of these clusters. If you just have a greenfield and just have a host set, then you'll authenticate to that host. The nice thing about having vCenter in the loop at this point in time is you can actually snapshot as you progress through the deployment. So if something doesn't go quite right, we revert back to those snapshots. So back to the installer, I'm going to click install. Next, I'm going to accept the user agreement, and I'm going to do an external platform services controller. This will enable us to put these PSCs behind a load balancer later. All right, so once the information's filled in, next, we're going to get a certificate warning. You're going to say yes to that. So it's logged in successfully to the vCenter. Click where the VMs are going to go. I'm just going to click the data center here. So the first VM structure is, I'm going to put it in the first cluster here. select the data store. I'm just going to select this one. You can enable thin provisioning. I guess I would just caution doing that in a production environment, but to each his own. So we're on the correct VLAN already, VLAN 3. And the system name, this is going to be the fully qualified domain name of the system. And there we go. Just make sure this is all set correctly. System name, IP address, subnet mask or length, gateway is good, and DNS server. We don't touch the ports down here. They're good for what we're doing. I click next. Summary, it's kind of already went over that. We're going to click finish. Now this is going to take a little bit to deploy, so I'm going to speed up the video and then I'll stop it after this first deployment actually is complete. All right, excellent. We have now successfully deployed our first PSC. I'm gonna, at least the image of the PSC, and now we're going to click continue. Next. I am going to sync with a time server. Here's where that NTP server comes into play. I am going to enable SSH. Very handy. Clicking next here, and just to keep things simple, I'm just going to do this single sign-on domain. And for the site, I'm going to also be very simple. Site 1. That's it. I don't really want to join any customer experience improvement programs. Looks good. I click finish, and then basically it's telling me that I can't pause or stop the installation. So, yep, good to go there. And it'll start starting services. So I will speed up the video somewhat, and we'll go from here. So we've now successfully fully completed the deployment of the first PSC. So I'm going to go ahead and click close here. And it automatically just kind of opens up a web browser. Don't really need this at this point, so let's close it. And there is our first PSC. Going back to the installer, and we want to get this second PSC going. I am going to just run through this real quick. And we're off. So you notice that I gave it its own IP address, obviously. Essentially exactly what I did for the first deployment. Outside of the name and IP address, it's exactly the same. I'll go ahead and speed the video up again, and I'll catch you when the appliance has deployed. All right, our second PSC has been deployed. Now we need to go through the configuration steps. Run through that just real quick. In this step is a little different. We actually need to join an existing SSO domain. So now they want us to point to an already deployed PSC. And that one would be the one that I just deployed. And it's going to have a little chit chat with that already deployed PSC and pull some information from it. So this is the second PSC I'm deploying in this particular site. So I'm going to say join an existing site, and there's the site that I created initially on the first PSC. One thing to note here, when I do attach it to this other PSC, it automatically sets up replication between the two. So a good thing to note, and we'll come back to that when we actually do the ring topology or ring agreement later. So I'm going to say next here. So basically what I've done here is I've joined an existing SSO domain, and I've also joined an existing site. And it's off. And I will catch you on the other side. I'll speed up the video and I'll see you then. All right, second PSC has been deployed successfully, so happy days there. We're going to go ahead and close this. Again, it's going to throw us over to the website. We don't really need that, and there he is sitting there. So these two are replicating between each other at this point. And I'm not going to make you sit through this. I'm just going to launch the installer. So here we want to go ahead and click Join SSO Domain. And we're going to put in the other PSC. And now it's going to ask us if we want to join or create a new. And since this is a new site, we want to do create a new site. So we've already created the first one, and now we're creating the second one. And for simplicity, just site 02 and click next. All right, our third PSC is deployed successfully now. So I'm going to click close. Again, goes to that web page. Let's do this all over again. I should probably note at this point, this is pretty cumbersome. However, if you're not deploying a bunch of PSCs and you're in an org that's kind of static, then this is probably fine. But for those that have to deploy these over and over again, there is a scripted way to do it as well. So you might want to look at that. I'm just going to show it to you real quick. It'll be right here. It'll be all this stuff in here, and that's where you get to the scripted area. And I'm just going to run through this again. I'll speed up the video up until we get to connecting it to the third PSC. You've seen this a number of times already, so. All right, great. Our fourth PSC is now deployed. Click close. And here they are. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we want to go and set up the replication ring or replication agreement. So many names for it that I've seen out there. I'm going to SSH into the fourth one. Basically, you could do this from any of them. Type shell to get to the appropriate prompt. Now that we're in the PSC, we need to go to this directory here, user live VMware vmdir bin. Here's the first command, vdc rep admin. I wanted to just show my partners and the partners of PSC 01. And here's the administrator username and password. There is the partner. So PSC 01 is connected to PSC 02. Those two will replicate together. So let's go back. Now I'm going to look at PSC 02 and see how he's configured. Okay, this is what we want to see. So he's right in the middle of 01 and 03. So when 02 was deployed, he connected to 01, which created that replication partner. When 03 was deployed, he connected to 02, which created that replication partner. So 02 is replicating both ways to the appropriate PSCs. We should see similar on 03. And this is what we want to see again. When 03 was deployed, he connected to 02. And when 04 was deployed, 04 connected to 03. So that's exactly what we want to see. Now 04 should look similar to 01. But 03 should be its replication partner, and it is. So when we deployed 04, we picked 03 during that deployment, and it created that replication partner. There is a command to create a replication partner. So what we have here is we're going to run the VDC rep admin again, but this time it's going to create an agreement. Lowercase h is the host that you want to go from, and uppercase h is the host you want to go to, and the administrator and password are there. So basically, I want to set up a replication between PSC04 and PSC01, which will create that agreement or that ring. It doesn't give you anything to look at or come back to, so what we really should do is just look at PSC04. And sure enough, when we looked at him prior, he only had 03 there. Now he has 01. What I'm going to do just to close this up is I'm going to look at 01. And sure enough, when we first looked at 01, he only had PSC02 there. Now he has PSC04. That creates the full ring. So after we've deployed the PSCs, we kind of want to make a little bit of adjustment here. So that's PSC01. It's giving me a cert warning because it's self-signed cert. This is the management port, if you're not familiar, 5480. And for this one, you would log in with the root account. Let's go to networking, and we want to manage. So we're going to say edit. Notice that it only has one DNS server. You generally want to have a couple. Say okay here. There it showed up. Now the time server. Now these need to be separated by a comma. You probably noticed that the same IP addresses I use for the NTP are the IP addresses I use for DNS. This is just in relation to where Active Directory sits. These are actually the domain controllers, and DNS is just pretty easy to add there. Active Directory needs it anyway. And they already have like an NTP service going on there as well. I did, however, sync the servers up to an external NTP source, so everything would be at the same time. We wouldn't have drift. And now you should see 2 NTP servers. I'm going to complete this on PSC 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to speed the video up a little bit, but I'll see you back when I complete for PSC 04. All right, I've completed all 4 of the PSCs in terms of DNS and NTP. It's just best practice to have a couple DNS servers and a couple NTP servers going. But this basically completes the ring replication agreement, whatever you want to call it. So we are good to go for doing things like adding vCenter or creating the VMCA 6.5 as a subordinate CA at this point. So you can follow those directions on the website. I appreciate you listening, and I hope this was informative.